When I picked up the phone to ask my son Benjamin about his wedding date, I was not expecting the gut punch that followed. His wife Brenda looked me straight in the eye with a smile that could cut glass and said, "Oh, we tied the knot yesterday. We only invited special people." Special people. That phrase froze me where I stood. For 3 long years I had been the one covering their rent, $500 a month every single month. I had furnished their apartment piece by piece. I had filled their refrigerator when the shelves were bare. But according to Brenda, I was not special. I stood there in my own living room, the phone heavy in my hand as if it weighed 1,000 pounds, while Benjamin refused to meet my eyes. Brenda was sprawled across the sofa I had bought for them, looking perfectly at home. Upstairs in my closet hung the pale pink dress I had chosen for her wedding, along with the new shoes I had bought to match. $300 spent so I could look nice in wedding photos, pictures I would never be part of. I had set aside $1,000 as a gift, called my sister Charlotte in New Jersey with the happy news, even scrubbed my house top to bottom in case they stopped by after the ceremony. All of it came crashing down with those 4 little words, "Only special people." Benjamin finally looked up and mumbled something that sounded rehearsed. "Mom, it was just a small private thing. Just us and a couple of witnesses." But I already knew the truth. I had seen the photos plastered across social media. Brenda's parents smiling beside the happy couple, her siblings raising glasses of champagne. And there was Brenda herself, glowing in a white dress I had unknowingly helped pay for with the $400 I gave her last month. 7 days later, one exact week after that humiliation, Brenda called me again. Her voice was different this time, shaky and desperate. "Dorothy, the rent is overdue. The landlord says if we don't pay this week, we'll be kicked out. You must have forgotten to send the money." I sat in silence for a moment, remembering all the times I had rushed to the bank to cover that rent. All the nights I skipped little luxuries for myself so I could make sure they had a roof over their heads. And now, after they cut me out of the most important day of my son's life, they had the nerve to act like nothing had happened. "Brenda," I said, my voice calm, calmer than I expected. "Didn't I tell you I only help special people?" The silence that followed was so thick I could hear my own heartbeat. For the first time in years it was not me trembling, it was her. "Dorothy, I don't understand," she stammered. "We've always been special to you. You're like a second mother to me." Lies, every word of it. The same sugary tone she used whenever she needed money. For the wedding dress, for the rings, for the honeymoon I unknowingly financed though I was never welcome to witness a single moment of it. For years I had walked on eggshells, tiptoeing around their moods, handing over money and gifts just to feel included. I was the dutiful mother, the agreeable mother-in-law, the silent benefactor. And for what? To be told I was not special. That phrase lit a fire inside me that I had not felt in decades. That night after I hung up I cried. But not the tears of a sad, rejected mother. No, these were the tears of fury, of years of pent-up frustration. I wept for all the times I had been treated like a burden. For all the moments my love was dismissed as if it were worthless. I wept for the foolish woman I had been, begging to be needed by people who only saw me as a wallet. By morning something in me had shifted. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. The same tired eyes, the same wrinkles carved by years of giving. But behind them now was something harder, something sharper. A determination I had forgotten I was capable of. I brewed my morning coffee just as I had every day for 40 years. But this time I did not reach for my phone to check if Benjamin had sent an apology that would never come. For once I was my own first thought of the day. At the kitchen table, where I had counted out their bills, planned their surprises and cried over their indifference, I spread out my checkbook and bank statements. I needed to see in cold numbers the size of my own foolishness. Rent. $700 a month for 36 months, $17,000. Groceries and supplies. About $200 a month, $5,200. Gifts for birthdays, Christmas, anniversaries. At least $4,000. Brenda's medical emergencies. $800. Car loan they never paid back, $5,000. Air conditioner repair. $700. Living room furniture, $2,000. The grand total, $40,000. $40,400 from my husband's inheritance, from my pension, from the nest egg I had carefully built over a lifetime of hard work. Gone. handed over to two adults who could not even pretend to respect me. That was when the phone rang, Benjamin's name glowing on the screen. Normally, my heart would have jumped at the sound of Benjamin calling, and I would have dashed to answer, praying he'd finally apologize, tell me it was all a mistake, and beg me to forgive him. But this time I let it ring once, twice, 3 times and then fall silent. I kept sipping my coffee as though nothing unusual had happened. 10 minutes later the phone lit up again, Brenda this time. I ignored that too. Then came the text from Benjamin. Mom, please answer. We need to talk. Without hesitation I deleted it. By 3 o'clock that afternoon I decided to go for a walk. My first in months that wasn't tied to their errands. Usually it was the bank for a transfer, the grocery store to buy them food, or the pharmacy to pick up Brenda's prescriptions. But this time I walked simply because I felt like it. I wandered past the park where Benjamin used to play as a boy. I remembered his small arms wrapping around me, his little voice saying I was the best mom in the whole world. When had that child disappeared? When had he turned into a man who treated me like a cash machine with a heart attached? When had I convinced myself that love was something you could buy? Eventually I stopped outside the bank, the same one where I had drained my account month after month for them. Through the glass I saw Mr. Johnson, the branch manager, who had handled all those transactions for me. He waved. I went inside and marched straight to his office. Mr. Johnson, I said, I need to cancel every automatic transfer I have set up. His eyebrows shot up. For 3 years those transfers had been as predictable as the sunrise. Are you certain, Mrs. Hilton? Did something happen? His tone carried more genuine concern than my son had shown me in years. What happened, I said, steady and calm, is that I finally woke up. Cancel them all. And while you're at it, I want to know how to lock down my accounts. I don't want anyone else with access to my money. As he typed away, my phone buzzed and rang nonstop, Benjamin, then Brenda, then Benjamin again, as if they had some kind of radar that told them their gravy train was about to derail. I powered the phone off entirely. When Mr. Johnson handed me the paperwork, he hesitated. Forgive me for saying this, Mrs. Hilton, but in all these years I've seen how generous you've been. I just hope no one is forcing you into this decision. That simple kindness from a man who only knew me through bank records touched me more than I expected. No, I told him. No one is pressuring me. I've just stopped pressuring myself. I left the bank feeling lighter than I had in years, as though I had walked out of there minus a mountain on my back. For the first time in a long time, every dollar I had was mine. No strings attached. No obligations to people who mistook me for a bottomless wallet. On the way home I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made for Benjamin and Brenda. The trips I never took, the friends I stopped seeing, the hobbies I abandoned, because every penny I spent on myself was one less penny for their emergencies. But when I pulled into my driveway, my stomach dropped. 3 cars were parked in front of my house, Benjamin's, Brenda's, and a third one I didn't recognize. Through the windows I saw movement inside. My blood turned cold. They had keys. I had given them those keys out of trust, believing they'd one day return the care I'd shown them. I drew in a deep breath and opened the door. Time for the first real battle of my new life. What I saw inside is burned into my memory. Benjamin sat slumped on my sofa with his head in his hands. Brenda paced the room like a restless animal. And at my dining table a stranger, an older man in a gray suit, was rifling through my personal documents. What is going on here? I demanded, louder than I thought I could be. They all froze, looking at me as if I were the intruder in my own home. Brenda spoke first, her voice shaky with urgency. Dorothy, thank goodness you're here. We need to talk. This is Mr. Foster from the law firm we consulted about your situation. My situation? I asked coolly. What situation? I'm doing just fine. Benjamin finally looked up, his eyes full of panic, not love. Mom, we went to the bank. They told us you canceled the transfers. Mr. Johnson said you even blocked our access to your accounts. We don't understand. Why would you do that? The man in the gray suit stood and extended his hand. Mrs. Hilton, I'm Dr. Foster, a family law attorney. Your children are concerned about your mental health, and they asked me to step in. I did not take his hand. Instead, I walked past him and scooped up every paper he had laid out on my table. These are my private documents. You have no right to touch them. Mom, Benjamin said with that condescending tone he'd perfected over the years. We're worried about you. You've been acting strangely, cutting us off without explanation, ignoring our calls. It's not like you. Maybe you need professional help. Brenda stepped closer, her face arranged into false tenderness. Dorothy, sweetheart, we know you're under a lot of stress. Maybe loneliness is wearing on you more than you realize. At your age, confusion can happen. It's normal. That word, confusion, snapped everything into focus. Now I understood. This wasn't about helping me. This was about declaring me incompetent so they could take control of everything I had. I am not confused, I said, steel in my voice. In fact, I am clearer than I have been in years. And all of you are going to leave my house right now. Mr. Foster raised his hands in mock reasonableness. Mrs. Hilton, I know this feels overwhelming, but your children do have the legal right to intervene if they believe your financial decisions are impaired. They've documented several concerning behaviors, Mr. Foster announced, his voice heavy with false authority. Concerning behaviors. The laugh that came out of me was sharp and raw, more bark than song. Like what? I asked. Like deciding my own money belongs to me? Like refusing to bankroll two grown adults who treat me like garbage? Brenda flinched as if I'd slapped her. We never treated you badly. You're family. And besides, everything you have will belong to us someday anyway. We're just speeding things up. There it was, the truth laid bare. In their eyes, I was already dead, and they were simply collecting their inheritance in advance. Didn't matter if I had 70 years or 70 days left. My worth was reduced to the digits in my account. Out, I said, pointing to the door. All three of you. Out of my house. Benjamin jumped up, his face twisted into that same spoiled expression he wore as a child when he didn't get his way. Mom, we can't just leave. We have responsibilities. The rent, the car loan, the credit card you co-signed for. You can't just cut us off overnight. Can't I? My voice rose firm and full for the first time that day. Who says I can't? For years I've paid rent for a place where I was never welcome. I've stocked refrigerators in homes that had no room for me. I've financed a life that erased me. Don't tell me what I can or can't do. Mr. Foster slid a folder across my table. Mrs. Hilton, this is simply a temporary arrangement. A power of attorney. It would allow Benjamin and Brenda to manage your finances until you feel better. This would ease the transition. Without even glancing inside, I snatched the folder and tossed it straight into the trash can. The only transition happening here is yours, out my front door. Brenda's eyes filled, but those weren't tears of grief. They were the frustrated tears of a schemer cornered. You can't do this, Dorothy. We were counting on you. We made plans around your support. We took on obligations because we trusted you'd always be there. Obligations with my money, I snapped. Never once with my happiness. Never once with my companionship. Just with my money. And now that I've decided to spend it on myself, suddenly I'm a confused old woman who needs supervision. Benjamin edged closer, trying to soften his face into something resembling remorse. Mom, we messed up. The wedding, it was just nerves, pressure. We can fix this if you'd only be reasonable again. Reasonable. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. Reasonable, according to you, means handing over every penny while you treat me like a stranger. Reasonable means pretending it doesn't rip me apart to be excluded from my only child's wedding. If that's reasonable, I'll happily stay unreasonable. Mr. Foster began packing his files with the speed of a man used to slam doors. Mrs. Hilton, this matter isn't finished. If your children believe you're making poor choices due to mental decline, a court can appoint guardianship. The words hit me like a slap. This wasn't just manipulation, it was a legal threat. I met his gaze head-on. Mr. Foster, before you make threats, do your homework. I'm 65 years old, and for 40 years I've managed my finances flawlessly. I raised my son alone after my husband died. I worked until retirement honorably and supported myself. Until last week, I was supporting two perfectly capable adults as well. You won't find incompetence here. The false tears vanished from Brenda's eyes, replaced by cold steel. This won't end here, Dorothy. We have rights, and we'll find lawyers of our own. Excellent, I said with a smile sharp enough to cut. Use your own money for once. Because mine is no longer available for your legal temper tantrums. The three of them marched toward the door, wounded pride stiffening their backs. Just before stepping out, Benjamin turned to me, his voice low with warning. Mom, this will end badly for you. One day you'll be all alone, and there won't be anyone left to take care of you. Benjamin, I said, my voice calm but clear as glass, I am already alone. The only difference is that now it's by choice, not neglect. When the door shut behind them, silence filled the house. But it wasn't the suffocating silence of loneliness. No, this was the beautiful silence of freedom. That night I didn't sleep. Not because of sorrow or regret, but because of adrenaline. I lay awake, mind racing, sketching out a plan the way a general lays out a battlefield. If Benjamin and Brenda wanted war, they'd get one, but on my terms with my strategy. At 6 the next morning, I was already dressed and ready to move. My first stop. The office of Attorney Proud, the man who had handled my late husband's will years ago. Unlike the smooth-talking Mr. Foster, this man was respected and known for defending seniors' rights. After hearing my story, Mr. Proud nodded gravely. Mrs. Hilton, what your children attempted yesterday is sadly common. It's called elder financial abuse. And it's a crime under federal law. The fact that they entered your house uninvited and went through your private papers, that alone is a violation. His words settled into me like steady ground beneath my feet. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't overreacting. What they had done was abuse. But it also meant the fight was bigger, sharper, and more dangerous than I realized. We'll need thorough documentation, Mr. Proud continued. Every transfer, every gift, every instance of pressure for money. And yes, we should revise your will immediately, to block any future manipulation. For 3 hours we combed through records building a case. He whistled low when he saw the grand total $33,400 in just 3 years. Mrs. Hilton, with that money, you could have lived well. You could have traveled, enjoyed your retirement. Instead, you financed the lifestyle of 2 adults who wouldn't even honor you with a seat at their wedding. By the time I left his office, I had a clear strategy. Step 1, change the locks on my house. Step 2, install a security system with cameras. Step 3, open a new account at a different bank, one they couldn't touch. And Step 4, the sweetest step of all, start living the life I had put on hold for far too long. My next stop was the hardware store. The owner, Mr. Carpenter, had seen me 100 times over the years, always picking up something to fix or replace at Benjamin and Brenda's apartment. But this visit felt different the second I walked in. Well, Mrs. Hilton, he said, resting his arms on the counter. Another emergency for your boy? His voice had the kind of friendly familiarity of someone who'd quietly watched my generosity leak away. No, Mr. Carpenter, I said. This time it's for me. I'm changing every lock in my own house, and I want the best you've got. He blinked but didn't ask questions. While I was picking out locks, his son Ethan, who installs security systems, wandered in. Providence, plain and simple. Ethan, I said, I need cameras, the full system. Inside, outside. Price isn't an issue. By the time they were drawing up the installation plans for the next morning, my phone buzzed with a call from an unfamiliar number. I already knew what that meant. It was Brenda, using someone else's phone since I blocked her after yesterday's showdown. Dorothy, it's Brenda. Please don't hang up. Let's talk like civilized adults. Go on, I said, my tone as dry as sandpaper. I know you're upset about the wedding. It was a mistake. Benjamin and I talked about it. We want to make it up to you. How about a special dinner at your house? Cook together like old times? The manipulation was so obvious I almost laughed. Brenda, I asked, how much rent do you actually owe? Silence. I'd hit the nerve. 2 months. $1,000 total. But that's not why I'm calling, Dorothy. We miss you. We miss having you in our lives. Do you miss me? I said evenly. Or my money? Another pause. Then she surprised me with honesty. Both. Yes, we need your help, but we love you too. You matter to us. If I'm so important, I said, why wasn't I important enough to be at your wedding? Why am I not important enough to get a single call that isn't about money? When was the last time you phoned me just to ask how I'm doing? Silence again. We both knew the answer. Never. Brenda, I said. I'll explain this once. For 5 years you treated me like an ATM with feelings. You used me, ignored me, humiliated me. And when you delivered the worst insult of all, you didn't even blink. Now that the cash is drying up, you suddenly discover you love me. Dorothy, please. There is no please. I cut her off. You made your choice when you decided I wasn't special enough to be at your wedding. Now I'm making mine. I hung up and powered off my phone completely. This was my day of liberation, and I wasn't going to let them claw it back. That afternoon I did something I hadn't done in more than a year. I went to the beauty salon. For so long, I had canceled my appointments because Benjamin and Brenda needed something, or because the money I'd saved for myself became their emergency. Mrs. Hilton, Cynthia, my favorite stylist, called when she saw me. What a surprise. I thought you'd forgotten about us. I didn't forget you, Cynthia, I said. I just forgot that I deserved to be cared for too. I ordered the full treatment: cut, color, manicure, pedicure. For the first time in years, I spent money on myself without guilt. Cynthia chatted about her kids and her dreams, and it felt like breathing fresh air to talk about something other than Benjamin and Brenda's needs. When she spun me around to face the mirror, she smiled. You look beautiful, Mrs. Hilton. But more than that, you look free. Did something good happen? Yes, Cynthia, I said. I finally learned how to say no. When I got home, a car I didn't recognize was parked out front. My heart skipped a beat. Were Benjamin and Brenda back with reinforcements? But as I approached, I saw an older woman sitting on my porch steps. Mrs. Hilton? She asked as I stepped out of my car. Yes, that's me. Can I help you? I'm Chloe Wind. I live next door. We've been neighbors for years, but we've never really met. Yesterday I heard loud voices in your house and got worried. Is everything all right? Her sincerity caught me off guard. A stranger who cared more about me than my own son. Come in, Mrs. Wind, I said. Let me make you some coffee, and I'll tell you a story you won't believe. In the kitchen, I poured coffee and told her everything. She listened quietly, nodding as I spoke. When I finished, her eyes glistened. Mrs. Hilton, she said, you did the right thing. 5 years ago I went through the same thing with my daughter. I thought it was my duty to bankroll her adult life. I thought she wouldn't love me otherwise. When I cut her off, it was awful. She threatened me, tried to guilt me, blackmailed me. But 6 months later, she called to truly apologize. Now we have a real relationship, based on love, not money. Her words lit a spark of hope inside me. Do you think Benjamin and Brenda will ever understand? I asked. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, she said honestly. But that's no longer your burden. Your job now is to live your own life. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I went to bed without worrying about Benjamin and Brenda's rent, their food, their whims. I went to bed thinking about me, my plans, my future, and I slept like a rock. At 8 o'clock sharp the next morning, Ethan and Mr. Carpenter arrived to change the locks and install the security system. While Ethan and Mr. Carpenter worked on my locks and cameras, my phone buzzed non-stop. Unknown numbers flashed across the screen. Brenda still trying to sneak through using borrowed phones. But I discovered a new talent. Ignoring every call that didn't serve me. And let me tell you, it felt wonderful. Mrs. Hilton, Ethan said as he mounted one of the cameras, this system will give you real peace of mind. You'll be able to check from your phone who's at the door, even if you're not home. And if anyone forces their way in, the police are automatically alerted. The irony didn't escape me. I was installing protection, not from strangers but from my own child. But the thought didn't sting the way it once would have. Now it felt practical, necessary, a way to preserve my hard-earned peace. While the men worked, I picked up the phone for something I hadn't done in years. I called my sister Charlotte in New Jersey. For too long, our conversations had been shallow little financial reports disguised as family updates. I'd gush about how much I'd given Benjamin and Brenda, how proud I was to help, never realizing I was really just bragging about my own slow self-destruction. Dorothy, Charlotte answered, her voice surprised. Sister, how are you? We haven't spoken in months. I'm better than good, I told her. And you won't believe it, but I've finally come to my senses. I laid it all out for her. The secret wedding, the humiliation, the lawyer, my decision to cut them off. She listened quietly until I finished. Then her reply floored me. Dorothy, it was about time. Every time we spoke, it broke my heart to hear you parade the money around like it was proof of love. As if love came with a receipt. I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how. My throat tightened. What do you mean? She sighed. At family gatherings, Benjamin never spoke about you with affection. It was always my mom paid for this or my mom covered that. Never once I miss my mom or I love my mom. You weren't a person, you were a service. Her words stung, but it was the kind of sting that cleans out an infection. Painful, yes, but healing. And Brenda? I asked quietly. She always spoke about you in the future tense. When Dorothy is gone, we'll remodel her house. When we inherit, we'll invest in this or that. As if your death was just a business transaction waiting to happen. A chill ran through me. All this time I thought I was investing in their happiness. But really they'd been waiting me out, treating me like a hurdle to clear on their way to my money. After the call, I sat in my kitchen absorbing it all. I thought about my late husband, Robert, the years of his love, the 35 years of raising our son alone, the 3 years of pouring over $30,000 into 2 adults who had already written me out of their lives. The doorbell rang and the new camera showed Chloe Wind, my neighbor, holding a steaming mug. I opened the door and she smiled warmly. Thought you might need some company after everything you told me yesterday. We sat together sipping coffee, and she told me more of her own story. My daughter said the exact same things Brenda says to you. You're like a second mom. We're special to you. Everything will be ours one day. They all pull from the same script. I chuckled bitterly. Do you think there's an actual handbook for this sort of thing? Not officially, Chloe smirked. But it sure feels that way. Chapter 1. Make her feel indispensable. Chapter 2. Create endless emergencies. Chapter 3. If she resists, question her sanity. We laughed, but it was the kind of laugh that aches. Did you feel guilty when you cut your daughter off? I asked. Every day for the first 3 months, she admitted. But then I saw changes. She got a second job. Her husband gave up golf and started real work. They learned to live within their means. More importantly, they learned I was a human being, not a resource. Her words were a balm to my soul. That afternoon, I visited Robert's grave for the first time in months. I'd always found excuses because Benjamin and Brenda needed me, or because even the cab fare felt like it should go to one of their emergencies. But standing there in the quiet cemetery, the grass soft under me, I felt peace I hadn't known in years. I cleaned his headstone, replaced the wilted flowers with fresh ones, and whispered to him as though he could hear. Robert, I lost myself for a while. After you left, I poured everything into Benjamin, trying to be both mother and father. But in doing so, I forgot who I was. Our son, he's not the boy you knew. Or maybe he was always this way and I refused to see it. But I've learned. The money you left for me to live peacefully doesn't belong to him. Not anymore. The wind moved through the trees gently, as if Robert himself was nodding in agreement. When I returned home, my new camera showed 3 cars in front of my house again. Benjamin's, Brenda's, and 2 more I didn't recognize. My pulse quickened, but this time I was ready. I watched on the screen as they stood outside, agitated, pointing toward my home. Instead of stepping out, I dialed Mr. Proud. Mr. Proud, I said calmly. They're here again. This time they brought company. What do I do? Stay in your car, he instructed. I'll be right there. And don't worry. I already requested a temporary restraining order. They're not allowed on your property. Within minutes, Mr. Proud arrived with 2 police cars in tow. I stayed in my seat as I watched the officers confront them. Benjamin gestured wildly. Brenda was crying again, but her tears had lost all power over me. An officer walked up to my car window. Ma'am, he said, you can step out safely now. As the police wrapped things up that evening, one of the officers told Benjamin and Brenda firmly, your visitors are leaving now. Benjamin shouted from the street as they shuffled to their cars. Mom, this is ridiculous. We're your family. You can't call the police on your own son. I stood tall, my voice calm and steady. Family doesn't threaten their mother with lawyers to declare her incompetent. Family doesn't break into her house without permission. Family doesn't treat her like a cash machine. From across the street, Brenda screamed, her face twisted with rage. You're going to pay us everything you owe. We've got bills with your name on them. You can't just abandon us. Before I could reply, Mr. Proud stepped in. Any communication will now go through my office, he said firmly. And let me advise you, before you make another empty threat, consult an attorney. We have full documentation of every voluntary payment my client made over 3 years. I watched them drive off in a cloud of frustration. They weren't beaten, not yet, but I finally had what I'd been missing: professional backup, emotional support from Chloe, and most of all, a mind clear enough to see right from wrong. That night, Chloe invited me over for dinner. Her daughter was visiting, and I got to witness something I hadn't seen in far too long. A family speaking kindly to one another, asking genuine questions, laughing together without strings attached. Not once did her daughter ask for money. I always wanted this with Benjamin, I confessed once her daughter left. Maybe you'll get it one day, Chloe said gently. But only after he learns you're a person, not just a resource. For the first time in weeks, I went to bed hopeful. The next few days were oddly peaceful. Too peaceful. My new cameras showed Benjamin and Brenda circling my house in their cars, sometimes parking for a few minutes, sometimes driving by slowly, as if they were plotting their next move. Mr. Proud had already warned me. Document everything. So I kept a log of every visit with dates and times. Their persistence will only strengthen your case for a permanent restraining order, he'd explained. And that thought gave me strength. On Friday morning, I was eating breakfast when the doorbell rang. The cameras revealed a young woman in a sharp suit, folder in hand, her smile professional but forced. I didn't recognize her, but I could smell official business, a mile away. "Good morning, Mrs. Dorothy Hilton," she said as I opened the door. "I'm a social investigator with the Office of Senior Services. We've received a report that you might be at risk, and I'm here for a wellness check." My blood ran cold. Benjamin and Brenda had gone even further. They'd pulled the government into it. "May I see your identification?" I asked. She produced an ID that looked legitimate. "My name is Mrs. Summer. May I come in and speak with you?" I let her in, knowing refusal would only be twisted against me. She settled in my living room, pulling out a form. "Mrs. Hilton," she began, "we've been told you've shown unusual changes in your financial behavior, that you've cut off contact with your family, and that you've installed unnecessary security systems out of paranoia. We've also been informed you've refused medical and legal assistance from loved ones." Every word had been chosen to paint me as a frail, delusional old woman. I recognized Brenda's fingerprints all over it. That girl always knew how to twist words until they cut. "Mrs. Summer," I said with all the dignity I could muster, "I want to call my lawyer before answering anything." "This isn't a legal interrogation," she countered smoothly. "It's just a wellness check. If you have nothing to hide, you should have no problem speaking with me." That phrase lit me on fire. If you have nothing to hide. I'd heard it before from abusers who used it to justify tearing down boundaries. "Miss," I said sharply, "I am calling my lawyer. You're welcome to wait here or return later, but I will not say a word without legal representation present." I dialed Mr. Proud, and 20 minutes later he was at my door. His face hardened when he saw the social worker. "Miss Summer," he said after checking her badge, "do you have a court order? Because my client is under legal representation, and an unapproved investigation can be considered harassment." "Sir," she faltered, her tone losing its confidence, "we received reports from concerned family members about Mrs. Hilton's well-being. It's our duty to investigate." "What family?" Mr. Proud shot back. "The same ones who tried to trick her into signing a power of attorney? The ones who entered her home illegally and rifled through her private papers? The same family that lived off her money while shutting her out of their lives?" He pulled out a folder and placed it firmly on the table. "Here is full documentation of my client's financial and emotional abuse. $40,000 drained in 3 years. Evidence of social exclusion, manipulation, and emotional blackmail. If someone needs to be investigated here, it is not my client." Mrs. Summer flipped through the documents, her professional mask slipping as unease crept across her face. Clearly, the story she'd been sold didn't match the facts in front of her. At last she looked up. "Mrs. Hilton," she said carefully, "can you explain why you suddenly stopped supporting your son financially?" "Because I finally saw the truth," I told Mrs. Summer, my voice steady. "Because I realized they weren't treating me like a mother but like a bank. Because I grew tired of financing the lives of people who only see me as an obstacle to their inheritance." She frowned slightly. "But don't you feel responsible for helping your family?" That question lit a fire in me. "Miss Summer, my responsibility as a mother ended when my son turned 18. I raised him, I educated him, I gave him the tools to become an adult who could stand on his own. He's 35 now. He is married. He's perfectly capable of providing for himself. Supporting his adult life financially isn't my duty. It's a choice. And I have chosen to stop." Mr. Proud leaned forward. "Tell me, Miss Summer, would you consider it normal for a 35-year-old man to be unable to pay his own rent without his 71-year-old mother covering it?" She hesitated, her eyes flickering. For the first time I saw doubt creep in. "Mrs. Hilton," she asked after a pause, "do you manage your own finances?" "I do," I said firmly. "I can show you every statement, every investment, every tax return. All current. All in order." "And do you live independently?" "As you can see, my house is clean, I care for myself, I drive my own car. And I have healthy friendships with my neighbors." "Do you take any medication?" "Only vitamins. Occasionally aspirin. Nothing else. No conditions, no treatments." Mr. Proud added, "My client has also had thorough medical exams recently as part of this legal process. She is in perfect health, mentally and physically." Mrs. Summer closed her folder slowly. "Mrs. Hilton," she said at last, "based on what I see here, I find no indication that you are at risk or in need of intervention. I will be closing this case." After she left, silence filled the room. Finally, Mr. Proud looked at me gravely. "Dorothy, this is going to escalate. Benjamin and Brenda are throwing money they don't even have at lawyers and professionals. They're desperate to have you declared incompetent." "Desperate?" I asked. "Exactly. They could try to file a lawsuit for guardianship. It's costly and difficult to win. But if they find the right judge and a doctor willing to testify against you, they could succeed." The thought sent a chill through me. The idea that my own child could strip me of control over my life legally was almost too much to bear. Mr. Proud added firmly, "But don't forget, we have solid evidence of your competence. Their motives are greed, not concern." That afternoon I called Charlotte. She listened quietly as I spilled everything. Then she said, "Dorothy, do you see how far they'll go for money? They're willing to risk their own reputation, burn family bridges, even pay for lawyers and psychiatrists they can't afford, just to get their hands on your bank account again." Her words settled deep inside me. Benjamin and Brenda had revealed their true selves. Whatever fantasy I had about reconciliation was gone. I had never been their beloved mother or cherished mother-in-law. I had been a wallet with legs. The realization was painful but freeing. I no longer had to doubt my choices. No more guilt. No more questioning. They had proven with their own actions that my well-being meant nothing compared to my money. That evening, Chloe surprised me by bringing a group of her friends to meet me. "Dorothy," she said warmly, "these are my garden club friends. Cynthia, you know her from the salon, Maria, Carmen, and Alfreda. We've all been through our own battles with family taking advantage. We spent the night trading stories. Maria had a brother who constantly bled her dry until she cut him off. Carmen had a daughter who only showed up when she needed a check. Alfreda, who was nearly 80, had to rewrite her will after her grandchildren began treating her like their personal retirement fund. What hurts most, I confessed, isn't losing the money. It's realizing the love I thought I had never really existed." Alfreda leaned toward me, her voice rich with age and wisdom. "Real love cannot be bought, Dorothy. If you had to pay for it, then it was never love to begin with." Her words soothed me like balm on a wound. She was right. I hadn't been loved, I had been used. I had paid for an illusion. "You know what I've discovered?" I told them. "Loneliness with people who don't love you is far worse than being alone by yourself. At least now, when I'm alone, I'm in good company." We all laughed, raising our glasses to hard-won wisdom. Later, after they left, I sat in my garden. The stars overhead seemed brighter than they had in years, Or maybe I was finally seeing them with unclouded eyes. For the first time in my adult life, I was financially free. No obligations. No debts to anyone but myself. And instead of feeling frightened, I felt exhilarated. I could travel, remodel my house, buy clothes I liked, give to causes that mattered to me, invest in my own future rather than paying for theirs. Freedom, I realized, tastes like hope. A month passed. My life slipped into a peaceful rhythm. I woke each morning to breakfast and the newspaper. I tended my garden, lunched with Chloe or one of my new friends, and filled my afternoons with long-abandoned hobbies. I even set up an easel and started painting flowers again, the same way I had before I became Benjamin and Brenda's full-time financier. But then one Thursday morning, as I was lost in my painting, Mr. Proud arrived at my door. His face was grave, his eyes clouded. "Dorothy," he said, his voice low, "we need to talk. Benjamin and Brenda have filed a formal lawsuit for incompetence in family court. They are asking for a guardian to be appointed over you." The words hit me like boulders. I had known it was possible, but hearing it spoken aloud made it terrifyingly real. "Does that mean," I whispered, "they could take control of my money?" "If a judge rules against you, yes," he admitted. "They could make Benjamin your legal guardian. That would give him control over everything you own." I sank onto the sofa, the weight of betrayal pressing down harder than ever. My own son was trying to steal my life, not just my money but my independence. "Mr. Proud," I asked faintly, "what evidence could they possibly have?" "You've seen for yourself that I'm competent," I told Mr. Proud, trying to steady my voice. "Yes," he nodded. "But they've lined up 3 witnesses who claim otherwise. They submitted paperwork about unpaid medical bills and medications you supposedly hoard without taking." I shook my head. "That's a lie. I don't have unpaid bills. I don't have any stockpiles of medicine." "I know, Dorothy, but the documents look convincing. They've also included a statement from Dr. Lehman saying you refused a psychiatric evaluation, which they've twisted into proof of mental decline. They've managed to turn your self-protection into supposed evidence you need protection." The manipulation was breathtaking. Diabolical. "Who are the witnesses?" I asked. He flipped through the file. "Brenda, naturally. A neighbor named Mr. Davis. And a man listed as your pharmacist, Mr. Green." I almost laughed. "Mr. Davis? The same one across the street who's hated me for years because my friends park in front of his house? And Mr. Green? He's filled nothing for me but vitamins and aspirin." "Then we start there," I said firmly. That afternoon Mr. Proud and I went to the pharmacy. Mr. Green's face turned red the second he saw me. "Mrs. Hilton. What a surprise." "Mr. Green," I said calmly, "I was told you signed a statement saying I behave erratically with my medications." His eyes darted. "Oh, Mrs. Hilton, well, your daughter-in-law came in a few weeks ago. She asked about your prescriptions. Said you were acting strangely." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her the truth. That you only buy vitamins and occasional aspirin. No prescriptions. Nothing unusual. But she insisted that was proof you weren't taking proper care of yourself." Mr. Proud stepped in. "Did you sign something, Mr. Green?" "She gave me a form. I thought it was for insurance, something routine. It said I was confirming irregular medication purchases. I had no idea it was for a lawsuit. If I had known." I exhaled slowly. Brenda's lies had tricked even him. "Mr. Green," I said, "I need a new statement. Put in writing exactly what happened. Clarify that I have no medical issues, no prescriptions, and no misuse of medication." "Of course," he said quickly. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Hilton." From the pharmacy we went straight to Mr. Davis's house. The man opened his door with hostility dripping from his face. "What do you want?" he snapped. Mr. Proud spoke evenly. "We understand you signed a statement regarding my client's behavior." "That's right," Davis said smugly. "That woman's gone mad. She's been strange for weeks." "What exactly have you observed?" Proud asked. "She installed cameras like she's living in a prison. She's got strangers visiting all the time. She screams at her own family in the street." I bit my tongue, then answered carefully. "Mr. Davis, those cameras are to protect me from my son and daughter-in-law, who broke into my house. Those strangers are my friends. And that yelling? That was me defending my own home. He sneered. That's exactly what a crazy person would say. I realized then there was no convincing him. His words weren't truth. They were bias twisted into something ugly. That evening Mr. Proud and I regrouped. His face was firm, resolute. Dorothy, we need our own psychiatric evaluation. I'll refer you to Dr. Moore, one of the best in the field. She can issue an official report confirming your competence. What if Benjamin and Brenda bribed the judge? I whispered. What if none of this matters? Dorothy, he said, his voice steady, the system isn't perfect, but it isn't rotten through either. We'll present hard evidence. We'll show their motives. We'll fight this. The next morning I sat in Dr. Moore's office. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed but kind. Mrs. Hilton, she said, I'm going to give you some tests. Answer at your own pace and be honest. For 2 hours she tested my memory, my reasoning, my understanding of finances, my emotional balance. I solved logic puzzles, math problems, and answered questions about my life. At the end she smiled. Mrs. Hilton, your results are well above average for your age. You're not just competent, you're thriving. I asked her softly, Doctor, why would my family do this? She sighed. From what you've told me, this is elder financial exploitation. Sadly, it happens more often than you'd think. Her words were a relief, but also a stab of grief. To need a psychiatrist's report just to prove my sanity to my own child was heartbreaking. That afternoon Chloe rallied the garden club for an emergency meeting. When I explained about the lawsuit, outrage filled the room. Dorothy, I'll testify, Maria said. We've been with you for weeks. You're fine, better than fine. Stronger and sharper than half the women I know in their 40s, Cynthia added. Alfreda, with her 80 years of wisdom, took my hands. My dear greedy children, trying to label their parents insane is nothing new. But you're better positioned than most. You have records, a lawyer, and friends who'll stand beside you. Their voices lifted me. I wasn't just fighting alone, I had an army now. You know what the saddest part of all this is? I asked them quietly. I told my friends. Benjamin and Brenda are willing to burn every bridge for money. Even if I wanted to forgive everything before, this has crossed a line. There's no going back. Cynthia put a hand on mine. And maybe that's a blessing, Dorothy. At least now you know exactly who they are. No more illusions. That night I finally cried, really cried. Not out of sadness but out of grief. I said goodbye to the son I thought I had, to the fantasy of a loving family, to the dream that unconditional love might one day be returned to me. It was a funeral for hope itself. But something new was born inside me. A fire. A determination that they could strip me of many things, but not my dignity, not my freedom. The war had officially begun, and I was ready for it. 3 weeks later the trial arrived. I woke before dawn, slipped into my best black suit, and studied myself in the mirror. The reflection staring back wasn't just an old woman defending her sanity. It was someone fighting for her dignity, her independence, and her right to be seen as more than a wallet. At 7 o'clock, Mr. Proud arrived to review our strategy one last time. Remember, Dorothy, he told me, the burden is on them. They must prove incompetence. We only need to show you are not. And what if the judge already leans their way? I asked quietly. I looked into Judge Miller's record. He's fair. He doesn't rubber stamp these cases. He's dedicated to protecting the rights of older people. That gave me hope. We arrived at the courthouse at 9. In the hallway, I saw Benjamin in a brand new suit he probably bought just for this show, and Brenda in black as though she were attending a funeral. Maybe she was, the funeral of our family bond. Benjamin couldn't even meet my eyes. But Brenda? She looked straight at me, her gaze cold and sharp. To her, this wasn't about family. It was business. Their lawyer was a seasoned man, polished and confident, the kind of man who looked like he'd built a career out of winning cases just like this one. When he began his opening statement, his plan was obvious. Paint me as a senile old woman manipulated by shady outsiders. Your Honor, he said with gravity, Mrs. Dorothy Hilton has shown clear signs of mental decline. She abruptly cut off financial support to her family without reason. She has installed unnecessary security systems out of paranoia. She has withdrawn from her loved ones under the influence of neighbors and opportunistic lawyers who are exploiting her vulnerable state. Every word was designed to turn my self-defense into weakness, my independence into paranoia. Then came their witnesses. First, Brenda. Oh, she gave the performance of her life. Tears flowed as she described how I had changed, how I'd become hostile and paranoid, how I was isolating myself from the family that adored me. Your Honor, she sniffled, her voice trembling. Dorothy has always been like a second mother to me. Watching her decline has been devastating. We only want her to get the care she needs. Pure lies, sugar-coated with crocodile tears. But when Mr. Proud cross-examined her, the cracks showed. Mrs. Schuster, he began. When was the last time you called my client without asking for money? Brenda faltered. Well, we always talked about many things. Can you give us a specific date? I don't remember exact dates. He pressed. Is it true you and your husband married without inviting her? It was a very small ceremony, she muttered. And when my client asked about the wedding, didn't you tell her you had only invited special people? Brenda's face turned crimson. Those words were taken out of context. What context, Mr. Proud asked coolly, would make that statement acceptable to the mother of the groom? She had no answer. Next was Benjamin. Watching him swear to tell the truth before lying about me was one of the hardest moments of my life. This was the boy I raised alone, the boy I gave everything for. My mother has always been generous, Benjamin began smoothly. But lately she's been erratic, irrational. We believe she's being manipulated by people who are taking advantage of her. Proud's cross-examination cut through his act. Mr. Hilton, how much money have you received from your mother in the past 3 years? I don't know the exact amount. Does $33,400 sound accurate? He shifted uncomfortably. Maybe. She's always been generous. And how many times in those 3 years have you visited her without asking for money? The silence was louder than any answer. Proud pressed harder. Is it true you and your wife broke into her house without permission and rifled through her personal documents? We were worried about her, Benjamin muttered. Is it true you brought a lawyer to pressure her into signing a power of attorney? We only wanted to help her manage her finances. And at 35 years old, you still need your 71-year-old mother to pay your rent? Benjamin had no answer at all. Mr. Davis was next. He rambled about my odd behavior, my cameras, my friends visiting, my raised voice in the street. But under questioning, he admitted he'd never once spoken to me directly. Everything he knew was based on what he saw from his porch. Superficial gossip. Dr. Lehman testified that my refusal to undergo an exam was proof of mental decline. But then Mr. Proud calmly submitted Dr. Moore's evaluation, pages of results showing my mental sharpness. It blew his claim to pieces. Finally, it was our turn. Mr. Green, my pharmacist, explained how Brenda had tricked him into signing misleading paperwork. Dr. Moore testified with authority about my excellent cognitive health. Mr. Carpenter from the hardware store spoke about how I'd made calm, rational decisions to secure my property. And Chloe, along with my garden club friends, painted a vivid picture of a woman thriving, clear-headed, socially active, and stronger than ever. Then it was my turn. I stood, walked to the witness stand with every ounce of dignity I had, and felt the weight of 71 years on my shoulders. Not as a burden but as armor. My whole life was with me in that moment. The pain, the wisdom, the strength I had earned the hard way. Mr. Proud let me tell my story. All of it. The $33,400 I had spent in 3 years. The betrayal. The exclusion. The abuse. And as I spoke I realized something. This wasn't just a trial about my mind. It was a trial about my worth as a human being. I spoke plainly on the stand, my voice steady. The humiliation of being shut out of the wedding, the years of emotional blackmail, the invasion of my privacy, the threats to take over my life. That is why I stopped giving them money. Mr. Proud asked. And why, Mrs. Hilton, did you finally decide enough was enough? Because I realized what I was receiving from them wasn't love, I said firmly. It was a business arrangement disguised as family. My money was always welcome. I as a person was not. Do you regret your decision? He asked gently. I looked straight at the judge. I regret only one thing, that it took me so long to make it. When Benjamin's lawyer cross-examined me, he tried every trick. He asked if my new friendships were manipulative. He suggested I was confused about finances, but I answered clearly every single time. These women, I told him, are the first friends in years who see me for who I am, not for what I can give. In closing, Benjamin's lawyer repeated his claim that I was being controlled by outsiders, that I was a vulnerable old woman who had been swayed against her family. But Mr. Prout's rebuttal cut through like lightning. Your Honor, what you've seen is not the case of a senile woman. This is the story of someone who finally found her voice after years of being drained financially and emotionally. The plaintiffs have offered no real medical evidence. They have offered nothing but frustration, because their income source has decided to protect what is hers. That is not incompetence. That is courage. Judge Miller left the courtroom to deliberate. Those 2 hours felt like 2 lifetimes. When he returned, his face was solemn, but his words were clear. After reviewing the evidence, it is the opinion of this court that Mrs. Dorothy Hilton is fully competent. Professional evaluations confirm her cognitive ability. Her financial choices, while painful for her family, are completely rational and within her rights. My heart thundered in my chest. He continued, furthermore, the evidence strongly suggests this lawsuit was motivated by financial gain, not genuine concern. The court denies the petition for guardianship. I had one. Not just the case but my dignity, my independence, my freedom. When we walked out of the courthouse, I saw Benjamin and Brenda huddled with their lawyer, arguing. Brenda's eyes burned with hatred as she stormed away. Benjamin glanced at me once, just once, and for a heartbeat I thought I saw regret. But it was too late. That night, Chloe gathered our friends at my home. We raised our glasses to justice, to freedom, and to the unshakable bond of women who stand together. Dorothy, Alfreda told me, her voice wise with age, today you didn't just win a trial. You won your life back. She was right. For the first time in decades, my future belonged only to me. I could travel. I could create. I could live without guilt, without fear, without manipulation. 3 months later, I sold my house and moved into a bright apartment near the city center. I donated half my savings to organizations that protect older people from the very abuse I had endured. The other half, I used it to finally live. I traveled across Europe. I took painting classes. I joined volunteer groups where my time and heart mattered more than my money ever had. I never heard from Benjamin and Brenda again. Word reached me that they'd been forced into a smaller apartment, and that Brenda had finally found a job. Maybe hardship would teach them what my generosity never could, the value of honest work and standing on your own 2 feet. Some nights I step out onto my balcony and look at the stars. I think about the woman I was a year ago, scared, used, and convinced she had to buy affection. That woman is gone. In her place stands someone who has learned the truth. Real love has no price. And freedom is always worth the fight. My name is Dorothy Hilton. I am 72 years old. And I have finally learned the most important lesson of all. The first person I must love and protect is myself.